Welcome to Night Shadows. I'm Stuart Best, where the paranormal is normal, where that which you thought you knew, you didn't, and where the future can be known if you know exactly where to look.
Well, hello everyone, and good evening. I'm Stuart, and we have Larry with us, Larry Taylor, our update expert, and there's a lot going on, and I guess I don't know where one should start with all of this. Hi, Larry. How are you doing?
Hello, Stuart. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Maybe we should start with this no-fly zone that the House, and I've tried to verify it, and I think I have, that it's actual and it's real, that the House passed a resolution for a no-fly zone over Syria. Well, I thought Putin already had issued a no-fly zone from the Russian viewpoint. So is this just a way to, invoke World War III or something of that nature?
Well, what's very interesting is the fact that, there was a recent headline came out, I think, over Thanksgiving that, you and I talked about, but I don't think we had a show, reporting that the Turkish army had made a statement that the Syrian Air Force had bombed the Turkish troops outside of Aleppo and killed a number of them and wounded 10 or more, and they said that was an act of war. And of course, now we've got them talking a no-fly zone, but basically Putin already has a no-fly zone, and he's already turned back Turkish warplanes once that was coming into Syria. And he's also restricted U.S. flights in that region. So before, having a number of days before Trump takes office, unless he's stopped from taking office, it could be days of trouble with Obama and where this may be going.
Well, I would think that, Putin has already said that he would shoot down American airplanes or NATO aircraft if they were to enter into their area that he has designated as no-fly zones. So he would have to backpedal if he doesn't do anything about it. So, yeah, this could be a very dangerous situation. And what right, let's get into the international law concept. Assad invited Putin into his country to help defend it, which he has every legal right to do as a nation and under international law. So what right then does America have to declare a no-fly zone in a country of which they're not invited or have no interest other than a political coup?
Yeah, well, that's very true, Stuart. And what's interesting, I heard some rhetoric on Fox News this evening talking about how that Assad's troops, along with Russians, of course, were about to take Aleppo back finally, which would put all the major cities back under Assad's rule. And they were inquiring what would Putin do with Raqqa, who, where Turkish troops embedded with some Americans are trying to battle some ISIS forces in the region. And they're saying, would Putin then give Turkey that portion of Syria that they've occupied right now and Raqqa, or would Putin tell Turkey to move back and give it to Assad? So that's a question. And, of course, we already know that Russia's there by invitation, and we literally are intruders.
Yeah, we are, and we're in total violation of international law, but then Babylon the Great is also called a lawless nation, totally lawless. We just don't pay any attention to any laws. We just do what we want. But, Putin also made a comment about NATO and American troops fighting ISIS. He said, you're not fighting ISIS. You created them. Why would you fight them? It's all a ruse. And Putin certainly has to know that. So this is kind of a weird, very strange situation as I look at it. Anyway, and you mentioned that Libya is in the process possibly of offering a naval base and some Air Force bases to Russia?
That's ongoing right now, Stuart. Matter of fact, Depka File has a headline this morning, and I posted it. It says, Russia's new move for Russian military bases in Libya. And the report is that the Libyan General Hafner is in Moscow now, involved in talks giving Russia air and naval bases in the central Mediterranean, outside of all places, Stuart, Benghazi.
Wow. Well, I guess that's our just rewards, right? That sooner or later the hammer of the whole earth, which is what the Lord calls American Babylon, as the hammer of the whole earth, gets destroyed in the end. So evidently our hammer is defective or something, because it doesn't work for very long. And we are into just about every nation, stirring up trouble, causing regime change, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this can't go on forever. The prophets of the Old Testament say there is an end to it. And that end is very, very severe, because nobody in America survives it. So I guess we get our just desserts for all of this. So how far along are they, do you know, on the negotiations, or is this pretty much a done deal for Libya giving Russia a warm water seaport?
Well, what's interesting, Stuart, is how Putin has actually stepped into the void that Obama and, of course, also Hillary Clinton created. I mean, 8 years of dismantling of American foreign policy overseas and dismantling any military we had overseas, basically, and neutering the small military we still have in the U.S. But this is what's interesting, Stuart, and you asked me how serious is it. Well, it's very serious for the Libyan general to be in Moscow. And what's interesting, too, Stuart, not only that, you've got Netanyahu going to Moscow over and over and over and working deals with Putin, and a headline that we can't find in American news, and that is, it's actually out of Israel also, Putin using Egyptian pilots from El-Sisi, now flying Russian attack helicopters in Syria. And it claims that Egyptians are now flying the Russian equipment and are launching strikes in Syria against U.S.-led rebel forces. El-Sisi, our old, we double-crossed him. We actually put Morsi in, the Muslim Brotherhood guy that El-Sisi had to take out. And you know, Stuart, the last 8 years, you're right, lawlessness and absolute outlawry in this nation right at the top.
Yeah, and the American people, of course, don't seem to. This is why I think the Lord is going to hold the American people more accountable than the leaders like Hillary or Obama and all these other traitors that are in Washington, because the American people could have risen up and could have prevented this, but they did nothing. They didn't do anything when the Supreme Court ruled Jesus Christ out of the courtrooms. They didn't do anything with Roe versus Wade, which is the murder, first-degree murder, according to the Bible. Abortion is first-degree murder. So I don't know. I mean, how far does a nation go? How many millions of innocent blood, how many rapes, murders, thefts, and killings do we put up with, or does the Lord put up with, before he just says, you know what, I've had enough of you people, and down you're going. And I don't think anybody here in America understands the horrific nature of judgment that is coming upon this nation, because the American people basically not only did not do anything, but if we are to believe the count, the popularity count on this election, they voted for a known murderer, a known criminal, a known person who has jeopardized the security of the United States, and yet they elected her anyway. I don't understand this. I really don't.
Well, you're exactly right, Stuart. The American population, including the illegal aliens, and I know that's not good speech these days to use that terminology, but I can't see how they're anything else if they don't belong here and they come here illegal and they're aliens. I don't know how to do that. I would even call the arrival people maybe aliens. I don't know. A dinosaur like me, what would I know? But what's interesting, Stuart, is the fact that the American people, including the illegal aliens that voted for her in this election, what they said was millions, they would rather have the Clinton cartel run this nation and more lawlessness and greater lawlessness and, I guess to continue that third term of Obama's that we're not sure he's going to let go anyway of. They would rather have that than they would rather get rid of the righteous one and everything about righteousness, which means just simply doing the right thing. Couldn't have that in any kind of America. And then, people holler and scream at you, Stuart, because you call it Babylon.
Yeah, I know. They can't stand it. Well, it doesn't matter whether they believe it or think it's stupid. All the prophecies are coming to pass exactly as written against the United States of Babylon. So whether people like it or don't like it is immaterial. Reality is, and this is what the American people evidently are refusing to accept, they don't want the reality of where it is. And so they just drink their denial tea, mock it, say it's not true, but nevertheless, they're going to have to go through it. And this is one thing coming that I don't think people really understand how horrific a judgment can be. I need to go back and look at Israel and what happened when Titus came along and more or less, destroyed everything. And, the mothers were eating their children in this siege. So, the Lord allows a lot of horrific stuff. And I suppose a lot of people would say, well, who wants to worship a God that allows that sort of thing? Well, we could have stopped it. I think he just allows the free will of people to turn themselves into hell and then complain about it once they're in there, So, yeah, it's weird. But getting into this electoral thing, I have an article here that's kind of interesting. Stein's recount might prevent Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan votes from being counted by the Electoral College. And what she did was she waited until 90 minutes before the Wisconsin deadline for filing a recount petition when it would expire. Okay, now Wisconsin had a number of million votes, and it says Wisconsin will almost certainly miss that deadline, which is all votes have to be certified by December 13th. Now, I just saw an article that Patty found that was very, very interesting, saying that they waited too long for Pennsylvania. So they cannot challenge that vote in Pennsylvania, but they do have Michigan, I guess, and Wisconsin. If Wisconsin were to miss the December 19th deadline, the electoral votes are not counted or may not be counted. She is also asking for a hand recount, which slows the process even further. If Wisconsin's electoral votes are extended on December 19, the state will then have to try to get Congress to include the votes in the January 6th count. Now, they say there's about 3 million votes that's going to be take a long, long time. So this could essentially throw the election over to Congress, and it's really not about who won or who lost on the popular vote. It's only about delaying things so that it goes into the House or the whole Congress, I guess. And you said something about Soros was behind all this. I guess I didn't see that article. What's that about?
Oh, that's the Drudge Report was breaking that. It says George Soros, recount villain, and they link it to this whole recount. And of course we know not only has Europe and the Brexit, the UK all suffered from Soros manipulations in their votings and their government mechanisms. America's suffering the same thing from someone that has got his fingers in all the pies. And it's one of the rich men. I mean, if people have a hard time figuring out who George Soros is, you can find a lot on him, and that's a Drudge headline today, George Soros, recount villain. So basically what this is saying is all of this recount has nothing to do with the election. It's simply another ploy to go another way to get what they wanted all along. And then we've also got Obama, who I was surprised. Fox News was literally vilifying Obama for actually continuing this threat against Trump taking office and Trump being actually the new president. Trump is besieged, basically. He's surrounded by those against him, and so we'll just have to see if the hand of the Lord's on him or what. But I'd shared with you earlier. We had talked about all the, all of this Trump Tower and golf course interviews that's ongoing and just filmed constantly, all 24 hours a day of people coming and going. And I shared with you my feelings on this. It's window dressing. It's actually eye candy. It's what Trump's doing, and I have a feeling in the background he has a plan.
He better have. He better have an option 2, maybe an option 3, and an option 4, and an option 5. But Obama has made many a reference to the fact that he's not going to leave office. He does it in such a way that everybody thinks it's a joke, but it's not. And, we've had those prophecies where they have said that behind it all, Obama has a plan for staying in office. And this Soros and Obama and Hillary Clinton got to all be, meeting. He was over here. So maybe this is just plan 1, is to attempt to throw this into Congress. And then, remember, the bots said confusion and chaos, and we didn't know who was elected, we didn't know who was president. And then you had Barry Rossman thing where it said Hillary Clinton president, and it had Donald Trump president, which would indicate maybe they didn't even know at that point in time who really was the president. And Obama did make the statement that he had no plans on leaving Washington, that he was going to stick around for 2 years. There have been a number of remarks that he has made in code that, if you pick up on it, he's made enough of them to indicate that he really does have plans for sticking around, and if not be the president, maybe someone in back of whoever is president. Because if Hillary got in, Obama would be right there. Right?
That's very interesting, and then they've got an upcomer, who is a Islamist, of course, about ready to take over the Democratic Party, is my understanding, and Ellison, I believe his name is, and also there have been some reports that Obama, behind the scenes, is manipulating and actually going to begin to run the Democratic Party again himself. This whole thing is just, it reminds me so much of that Game of Thrones. I put that in my post sometimes, and I'm not telling people to go watch Game of Thrones, because unless you know what happened in the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages, so to speak, you might not want to watch it. But the conspiracy and the behind the scenes manipulations to actually take the throne one way or the other, plan A, plan B, plan C, and plan D, it's there every day, and we're seeing this in America, in Washington, D.C. It goes on and on and on. It's non-ending. We don't have an election anymore. It's over. Not anymore.
That's right. Yeah. It's amazing what's going on and unprecedented. But this would keep Obama in power for a while until they try to work their way through this. And so maybe the bots are right. If it gets thrown to Congress, then, as I understand it, according to what this article is, Congress can elect anybody they want. And maybe this is that third man, or that, you remember the bots talked about a shuffle? And it basically said a new candidate steps forward. So this could get extremely.
Yeah. What's interesting, too, Stuart, is where is the Secretary of State, John Kerry? Has he vanished into a black hole? He went to Antarctica, and I've never heard of him coming back.
Maybe he's on a UFO somewhere. You just never know. But here's something that Obama said that they've got quoted. White House denies that Russia hacked the election for Donald Trump win. Now, I don't know if this is true or not. I haven't been able to vet it. The Obama administration confirmed the 2016 results, telling the New York Times the presidential contest accurately reflects the will of the American people. Now, I think I do remember him saying that.
Yeah, he did. He did.
Well, so then what's Hillary doing?
Probably what she's being told to do. This is a plan of the rich men. They're manipulating the election and the results.
Yep. We're being played like a fiddle. They probably already know what the results are. So, anyway, you mentioned a missing nuke. What is that about? And that could be extremely dangerous.
Yeah, this was also linked to a number of news outlets over in the Middle East. And of course, none of this news, we don't see any of this in America anymore. Have you noted how they're censoring basically everything around the world, especially with Iran? But
all the alternative news. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like Drudge Report, and that's where I found it. And it says Iran is missing one nuclear device, and it sparks grave concern by the Gulf Cooperation Council, who the Arabs who actually have reported this, that one nuke is missing from Bushehr nuclear facility in Iran. And you know, that's one of the things, Stuart, I've often heard a lot of people that were in the know, they said they were a lot more concerned about one missing nuke than maybe a number of them that went missing.
Well, do you remember back in the times when Russia was breaking up, or the Soviet Union was breaking up, that a lot of those suitcase nukes went missing? And I had a lot of reports that those were brought into the United States in various locations by Spetsnaz to take us down when the time came. So, yeah, we're in a lot of trouble. You also mentioned Turkey is going to be releasing more, I guess we could call them jihadists. They're not claiming that's what they are, but it sounds like that's what they are.
Well, it's kind of an interesting tale. Turkey, who is battling in Syria right now, and was also they wanted to take the UK's place in the EU. However, since France has begun its own kind of Brexit movement, and Germany, Merkel has already came out and made a statement, apparently the pressure is on in Germany, that she's about to have to deport over 1 million of the, I guess you'd call them the Muslim immigrants that flooded her country. You know, that Turkey has decided now that it don't think it wants to join the EU. Matter of fact, it's claiming that it's going to release a flood of immigrants into Europe And that'll pretty much implode Europe, Stuart, because a lot of Europe's ready to have a civil war over this issue. And, you and I talked way back when we saw this big influx of immigration, Muslim immigration, mostly men, coming into Europe. I told you that's an invasion.
Yes, it is. And that's what we got here. I don't think there's any question. This is the fifth column, just like the Bible says in Jeremiah, that we're being filled with the enemy, and when the call is given, they rise up and mischief in the cities. And, all they got to do is cut the power lines and cut the communications abilities, and you can throw an entire city like the size of Minneapolis, St. Paul into total chaos. And it wouldn't even take an hour to do it. So, we're on the cusp of something, I think, real big, and we're kind of at an area of time where the American people are more comatose than ever, it seems. But if you're a prepper or if you're concerned, now's the time to finish up all your preparations, because you're going to have to ride a big storm, I think.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Stuart. And I just finished reading that book by Nuke called Treason, and it's incredible in scope because it really lays out that it's really not so much the American people really need to fear the enemy within a lot more than the ones that are being brought here. But when it all breaks loose, the ones that are within are what's going to bring us down. And Treason is the name of the book, Treason, a novel by Newt Gingrich. And if you hadn't read it, read it and put it alongside Dan Gordon's book and Fortune's book on the Islamic threat, because they're here. Yeah,
they really are. Anything else? We got about 3 minutes left. Anything you want to bring out that I haven't mentioned?
I was going to two things, if you got a second.
Yep.
I was just going to say that Jewish JLTV, Jewish Live Television, January 2017 is going to begin to show the Torah Codes into Darkness from Richard Shaw, and also I wanted to mention real quick that the UFOs that were spotted and photographed in England or Ireland there recently, just a few days ago, they appear very much like the one of Jeff Alexander that we interviewed him on that he saw in Arkansas and photographed.
Yes. Well, there is an advance guard here. They're getting ready. I think the arrival is not very far off. I don't know if they're going to come here in the middle of a war or right after the war and just, say you guys are crazy and you can't do this anymore. We're not going to allow you to blow your planet up. So, kind of hard to know. You're a police officer, and you've often said that domestics are bad because reason goes out the window. There is no logic to any of it. It's all emotional. And it looks like this is what they're trying to do with America. It's like we're walking into a domestic quarrel.
Yeah,
and the enemy knows it.
Yeah, Stuart, it appears to me now that America itself is one gigantic domestic 24/7.
Yeah, that doesn't say too much for us, does it? But
no,
it is reality, and it is what it is. How do people get a hold of you, Larry?
My blog, LarryWTaylor.org. That's LarryWTaylor.org. Well,
folks, really, things are happening. Keep your eyes on Trump. Keep your eyes on Soros and what Hillary's doing and essentially what Obama's doing, because I think we're in the middle of a big, gigantic, show, and it's all been planned out ahead of time. They know exactly what they're doing, and we're just being played like a fiddle. And it's not going to work too well. Anyway, thanks for coming on, Larry. And everyone, thanks for listening, and we'll see you Wednesday. Good night.